This rabbi here reveals the shocking and disturbing details about the evil that is going on in our culture and in our society today.
The first one's called the possessor. The second one is the enchantress, and the third one is called the destroyer. And this is where it goes, because when you start with it turning away, then you have it always happens this way: sexuality, all that. Then you get to the third one, which is the principality, by which they offered up their children. Parents offered their children as sacrifices. That was part of the pagan world. It was not safe to be a child in the pagan world. Children were abused, they were sexualized, and they were killed.
We live in a society that has aborted God. We live in a society that has decided to throw God away. Millions and millions of babies are being murdered in our world on a daily basis. This is a great evil in the sight of God.
Getting an abortion is not easy. Making that decision is not easy. It's not something people do lightly. It's not something that you can just do.
Wait, here's one of the other posts that I referenced a couple of seconds ago. So how does a satanic abortion ceremony even work? They are celebrating it and admiring it. They literally made a whole Canva carousel post about it, teaching all of their followers exactly how to complete a satanic abortion ceremony.
To me, it is ironic that those who pride themselves on defending the rights of the weak murder them in the womb when they are the most weak. What kind of hypocrisy is that? Self-congratulating pseudo-humanitarians advocate a deadly force of violence unleashed against infants that makes the Nazi Holocaust look mild by comparison.
Killing of babies is not a new thing in our society, for it has been prevalent during the times of the patriarch in the Bible. The children of Israel did detestable things in the sight of God, for they sacrificed, killed, and murdered their babies to the evil deity called Molech.
But when you look at Jeremiah, he says, you're going to be judged, Israel, because of what you did to your children. Well, so what it's saying, and the warning of Jesus is, we can call him Molech, which actually means king, but they offered up their children. These are people who once knew God. They're offering up their children. So what it means is that as America goes and the West goes, it's going to start offering up its children. And that's exactly what happens. When you get to the end of the 60s, 1970, we begin offering up our children in abortion. And you say, well, how do we compare that? Well, remember, Jesus said they come back worse. Israel offered up thousands of its children. We have offered up millions of our children.
Yeah.
Find a quiet space. Bring a mirror if you can. Just before taking the medication, gaze at your reflection and focus on your personhood. Hone in on your intent. Your responsibility is to you. So already, on slide 1, they're saying the quiet part out loud. They are admitting that this is an egotistical and self-centered act where you are valuing your life over the life of somebody else who is more vulnerable and totally reliant upon you to keep them alive. A life that is totally innocent and has done nothing wrong except simply come into existence because of something that you did. And it's ironic when they talk about responsibility, your responsibility to you, when you are literally not taking responsibility for your actions and the life that your actions resulted in.
In our world, we're slaughtering between 50 and 60 million babies a year. In the United States, on record, is 1.5 million abortions a year. Every third baby conceived is murdered in the womb. 4,000 a day, plus 170 an hour. Planned Parenthood alone kills one every 95 seconds.
Our nation has abandoned God. Our nation has decided to exchange the truth for a lie. They have decided to exchange the truth of God to the truth of the devil, the evil one, our accuser and our adversary. For he is a liar and a murderer. For Jesus tells us that when he lies, he speaks his native language.
Millions upon millions upon millions of infants in the womb slaughtered. The death toll beyond anything anyone has ever seen in humanity to infants. And what you need to understand is God doesn't just judge individually. He judges collective. He judges men and nations. He judges them together.
What he did in this debate back in 2003 was he showed a photograph of a 21-week-old fetus he said had been spared abortion by doctors who operated on the womb to correct a birth defect. And he showed a picture in the United States Senate. This is the picture he showed. You see the hand here grasping the doctor's finger as they're about to operate in the womb at 21 weeks. Here's a better picture. As you can see, the arm coming out of the womb and the doctor holding the arm. So he shows this in the United States Senate, and he says this to Senator Barbara Boxer. At that time, she was the senator in California. He says, is little Samuel's hand the hand of a person, or is it the hand of a piece of property? And here's what Barbara Boxer said. I am not a doctor and I am not God. I trust other human beings to make these decisions. Now, question, do you have to be a doctor or do you have to be God to know that that's a human being?
For God tells us in Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Women and weak men have decided to kill babies, to kill innocent babies in the womb. This is wicked and this is evil, and there will be judgment for this. For the psalmist tells us, for you created me in my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb.
The Physicians Association of Planned Parenthood released this statement, quote, abortion is a treatment for unwanted pregnancy, the second sexually transmitted disease. Pregnancy is a sexually transmitted disease. Our nation and others are murdering a whole generation of humans in mass infanticide that was legalized in January of 1973 by the Roe versus Wade decision made by an unrighteous group of people on the Supreme Court. Now, 43% of all women have an abortion and 47% of abortions are repeats.
Comments like this. Historically, this is what we call human sacrifice, which is something that people have said about abortion for a while. And I never really commented on it or inserted myself into the conversation. I've just kind of listened and taken it all in. But now that they are calling it a satanic blood ritual, I think it's the time. I think we can all bring this into the conversation. I do not think it needs to be taboo because, to be honest, it is a sacrifice. You are sacrificing a life for your own benefit, for your own gain. And people are not silent about it. This is not some quiet thing now. People are proudly saying that they are doing this. I mean, think about all the celebrities that praise abortion and claim that they could not be successful without having an abortion, that they are so grateful because they would not be where they are without it. Like this.
Here I was, sitting in Los Angeles in my beautiful office of my own late night talk show. Soon I would be driving my hybrid car to my beautiful home to kiss my two beautiful and healthy children and my husband who had taken the year off to parent so I could focus on my career. And I have all of this. All of it.
I hate this bitch.
Because I was allowed bodily autonomy at 15. I will not be shamed into being quiet. We will not be shamed into being quiet. Never again.
And when I looked, I won't go into the detail, but in the book, when you compare child sacrifice, the ancient one, and you compare abortion, it has all these parallels. Example, that you know which children were offered up to this God more than any other? The children of the poor. Which children are aborted more? It's the children of the poor. That's right. You know, back then, they actually, this is how crazy it is. They actually considered abortion to be something sacred. Well, abortion, by the way, they also had abortion and literally infanticide. Yeah. And by the way, it was only the gospel that ended all this in the world for the most part. But they considered it sacred. Modern day abortionists and they're radical feminists, with abortion, and they actually will call abortion a sacred act, a sacrament. And some will even say it's a sacrifice. But it is spiritual. That's why it's so irrational.
In this country, over 3,000 babies a day are murdered in the womb. And we kind of gloss over that as well because we don't see it. This is spiritual warfare. Do you understand the state a man's mind has to be in order for him to give the word to murder thousands of baby boys, to wipe out every baby boy 2 years old and younger in an entire region? That is evil. That is spiritual warfare. And that's what we're dealing with and have been dealing with since 1973. Evil, wicked, spiritual warfare. And there are people today who are enraged. There are people who are actually in mourning today. Do you hear me? There are people who are on their knees sobbing in tears because something less than 3,000 plus babies a day are going to be murdered in this country. And for them, that is just unthinkable.
Well, my administrators were all very supportive of it. They actually helped me have the camera. I did all the editing. I found the music. That's all me. It's mostly my production. I just had a really great team of women behind me who wanted to help stop the stigma of abortion.
Okay, and so hold on. So Emily, let me ask a crazy question. That you're gonna first of all, you knew you were gonna take heat when you did this, right? You understand you're gonna be. It's a controversial topic. You're well aware of it. You're an abortion counselor, and doing this you gotta be to know. I'm gonna ask a crazy question.
Okay.
Did you get pregnant in order to do this video?
Right. A lot of people on Twitter said the same thing.
And you realize that I'm gonna have to laugh at that, right? Like,
Absolutely. If it's laughable, I hope it is. I'm relieved to see you laugh.
Okay.
Our panel's got
Emily.
lots of questions for you, so here's Samantha.
Emily, okay, first of all, I'm pro-choice, but your message was lost to me when you wrote in your essay that you were having sex, but you were not using birth control. So was abortion your form of birth control?
And is that the message you want to put out there?
So actually, what I want to clarify is that I did not have a single partner. Like I was not in a relationship. And to be honest, let's not talk about the fact that hormonal birth control can be very scary.
They have created their own gods in form of career, wealth, properties, and self-validation, and they all bow down to them in the altar of their own mind.
But when you have an advocacy of support for the slaughter of infants and homosexuality and complete sexual freedom, you have a formula for divine judgment.
The writer of Hebrews warns us that it is a dreadful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. He also tells us that it is appointed for man to die once, and after death is judgment. Every living soul shall answer to God. For Paul tells us in his letter to the Philippians that at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue shall confess that Jesus is Lord to the glory of the Father.
And Mary goes and she visits Elizabeth. And look what happens. This is in Luke chapter 1. At that time, Mary got ready and hurried to a town in the hill country of Judea, where she entered Zachariah's home and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the choice, the blob of tissue, the fetus, the baby leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit.
How did we ever get here where we just massacre infants in the safest place, in the womb, where we literally go in there and kill them? How did we get to this place? Well, you just have to go back and understand that Satan is a murderer from the beginning, right? This is satanic. This is a satanic thing. He is the father of lies, and he's the father of murder. He is the first murderer. He would have murdered God if he could have. Deicide in heaven, and he was thrown out. And when he came down to earth, he moved Cain to kill Abel and unleashed on the world the whole array of murders that has characterized human existence. Goes on relentlessly in everything from slaughtering little infants in the safest place in the womb to massacring people the way we're seeing it around the world and in the Middle East even now, and everything in between. Satan particularly goes after babies. He did in Moses' day. He did in Jesus' day. He wanted to kill all the young children in Egypt because of the fear that a deliverer would come. He wanted to kill all of the 2-year-old and under babies in and around Jerusalem for fear that the king was coming. Satan is a murderer. All of this is reflective of satanic hatred of the purposes of God and the life that God created.